Commander Jack Stone drummed his fingers against the command console of the UES Scorpion, staring at the blinking distress beacon that shouldn't exist. The Carina Nebula was supposed to be empty, officially designated as a no-travel zone due to stellar radiation. Yet there it was, pulsing with an urgency that made his combat instincts itch. Command explicitly ordered us to maintain course, sir, Lieutenant Chen reminded him from the tactical station. The diplomatic package to Centauri Prime cannot be delayed. Jack's weathered face creased into a faint smile. 15 years in the Marine Raiders had taught him that orders were guidelines written by people too far from the action to see the whole picture. How long would a quick recon take us off course, Lieutenant? 43 minutes, accounting for nebula interference. Chen's response was immediate. She'd already done the calculations. But, sir, the radiation is the perfect cover for someone who doesn't want to be found. Jack finished. He straightened in his command chair. Decision made. Helm, adjust course. Let's see who's crying wolf in our backyard. The Scorpion's engines hummed as they altered trajectory, cutting through the purple-tinged clouds of the nebula. Jack watched the radiation readings climb on his display, but they were well within the ship's shielding capabilities. Something about this felt wrong, and wrong in space usually meant dead if you ignored it. Distress signal gaining clarity, communications reported. It's an old Earth frequency. Merchant vessel registration. Jack's fingers stopped drumming. The raiders had dealt with enough pirate attacks to know the common lures. An Earth merchant vessel, this far out, broadcasting on outdated frequencies. It was too perfect, too convenient. Full scan, all bands, he ordered, his voice carrying the calm of experience. I want thermal, gravitational, everything we've got. If there's a dust mote out there, I want to know about it. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, their training showing in their efficiency. Jack had handpicked each of them, favoring intuition and adaptability over perfect service records. Right now, those instincts were screaming danger. Sir, Sensor Control's voice cracked with urgency. Multiple readings scattered through the nebula. They're moving. The tactical display lit up like a Christmas tree, showing dark shapes converging on their position. Jack's smile grew wider, took on a predatory edge. Kraxen's signatures. Should have known those bugs would be involved. Battle stations. Red alert klaxons filled the ship as the crew snapped into combat positions. But even as they prepared, Jack knew they were already caught. The pirates had positioned themselves perfectly, using the nebula's radiation to mask their approach until it was too late. The first shot came from their port side. Not a destructive blast, but a sophisticated electromagnetic pulse that rippled across the Scorpion's hull. Systems began failing in cascading patterns as more shots followed from different directions. They're not trying to destroy us, Jack announced, watching his ship's defenses crumble with clinical detachment. They want us intact. Crew, prepare for boarding action. The massive forms of Kraxen warships emerged from the nebulous clouds, their chitinous hulls reflecting the purple light like giant insects. Their boarding tubes extended toward the Scorpion with practiced precision. As his bridge crew drew sidearms and took defensive positions, Jack remained seated, that same unnerving smile playing across his face. The pirates would board, expecting to find panicked prey. Instead, they'd find a veteran of 100 boarding actions from both sides of the equation. Sir, Chen called out, her weapon trained on the bridge's main airlock. Should we initiate the self-destruct? Jack shook his head, finally standing as the first sounds of cutting torches reached them. No, Lieutenant. I think it's time these pirates learned why humans have a reputation for being terrible prisoners. The airlock began to glow red at the edges, and Jack Stone cracked his knuckles, ready to give the Kraxen a lesson they'd never forget. The Kraxen holding cell would have broken most prisoners. Bathed in harsh purple light that never dimmed, filled with a constant low-frequency hum designed to prevent sleep, and maintained at a temperature just above human comfort, it was perfectly engineered for slow psychological torture. But as Commander Jack Stone sat cross-legged in its center, his expression was one of fascination rather than despair. "Fascinating architecture," he murmured, running his fingers along the seamless wall for the 100th time. The raiders had trained him to turn captivity into reconnaissance, and these cells were telling him volumes about his captors. The door iris spiraled open, admitting 2 Kraxan guards. Their chitinous armor clicked against the metal floor as they approached, mandibles twitching with what Jack had learned to recognize as amusement. "Still studying the walls, human." The larger guard's translator rendered his clicks into harsh English. "Perhaps we should give you something more interesting to observe." Jack rose smoothly, maintaining the docile posture he'd adopted since his capture. "Just admiring your craftsmanship. The way you've integrated organic and metallic components is remarkable." His eyes tracked the subtle way their weight shifted, noting how their enhanced cybernetic implants lagged microseconds behind their natural movements. The guards exchanged glances. This wasn't how humans usually acted in captivity. Most raged, pleaded, or broke down. "This one," observed. "The slave master wants to see you," the second guard announced, producing neural restraints. "Apparently, you're worth more than standard merchandise." Jack extended his wrists, the picture of cooperation. "I'm flattered. Though I should warn you, humans don't generally make good slaves. Something about our contrary nature." The restraints snapped around his wrists with a soft hiss. As they led him from the cell, Jack began his real work. Every turn was memorized, every security checkpoint noted. He counted steps between junctions, observed patrol patterns, and most importantly, watched how the Kraxan themselves moved through their ship. Their route took them through the vessel's middle decks, and Jack's tactical mind assembled a complete picture. The Kraxan relied heavily on their technological superiority, but their cybernetic enhancements had made them predictable. Every movement was optimized for efficiency, leaving them vulnerable to the chaos of human improvisation. "Your ship layout is impressive," Jack commented casually. "Reminds me of the old aircraft carriers Earth used to build. Of course, those were much easier to navigate." "Silence," the first guard snapped, but Jack had caught the flicker of interest in his antenna. The Kraxan were warriors, and warriors always wanted to know about other warriors' methods. They entered a vast chamber dominated by holographic displays. The slave master, larger than the guards and draped in ceremonial armor, turned to study Jack with compound eyes. "This is the troublesome human." The slave master's translator rendered his voice in deep, resonant tones. "The one who smiled during capture." Jack maintained his relaxed posture, but his mind catalogued every detail of the room. 3 exits, ventilation shafts large enough for Kraxan maintenance drones, and therefore large enough for a human. Security systems that relied on detecting Kraxan biosignatures. "Nothing troublesome about me," Jack replied cheerfully. "Just a simple cargo ship captain who took a wrong turn." The slave master chittered, their version of laughter. "A cargo captain who disabled 6 of my warriors before being subdued. Who knows military hand signals and combat formations." He moved closer, looming over Jack. "No, you are something else. Something valuable." Jack's smile never wavered, even as his mind calculated angles and escape routes. "Worth quite a bit, am I?" "More than you know. The fighting pits of Carrion Prime would pay handsomely for a specimen like you." The slave master turned away, mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "Take him back. Double the guards on his cell." As they led him back through the winding corridors, Jack's cooperative demeanor never slipped. The pirates had made 3 critical mistakes. They'd given him a tour of their ship, confirmed his value alive, and most importantly, they'd revealed just how completely they underestimated humanity's capacity for patience. The cage was about to become a staging ground, and these pirates were about to learn why you never give a Marine Raider time to plan. The moment for action came during what the Kraxan laughably called an interrogation. 4 guards, the slave master, and a neural specialist crowded into the chamber, their chitinous forms looming over Jack's restrained figure. The neural specialist approached with a device that looked like a twisted marriage between a medical scanner and a torture implement. "This will extract the information we need," the specialist announced, mandibles twitching with professional pride. The process is usually fatal for lesser species. Jack watched the device power up with the same pleasant smile he'd worn for days. Interesting design. Human medical tech went through a similar phase. Want to know why we abandoned it? The specialist paused, compound eyes reflecting the device's glow. Professional curiosity won out. Why? Because Jack's smile turned predatory. It has a critical flaw in the power distribution system. His hands, supposedly bound by neural restraints, shot forward. The specialist had just enough time to register that the restraints had been deactivated. Carefully, methodically, over days of appearing to fidget nervously with them, before Jack's fingers found the exact spot where carapace met cybernetics at the base of his neck. The neural device clattered to the floor as the specialist collapsed, his cybernetic systems scrambled by the precise strike. Jack was already moving, becoming the whirlwind of violence the raiders had spent years perfecting. The first guard raised his weapon. Too slow. Jack flowed inside his reach like water, using the Kraxen's own momentum to slam him into his companion. Their cybernetic enhanced strength meant nothing when their balance was compromised. Both crashed to the floor, their neural nets temporarily overloaded by the impact. Impossible. The slave master backed toward the door, reaching for his sidearm. No human can move that fast. Jack caught the neural device with his foot, kicking it up into his hands. Wrong. No human you fought could move this fast. But then, you've never fought a raider, have you? The remaining guard charge, mandibles spread in a war cry. Jack sidestepped, noting how the guard's cybernetic leg telegraphed his movement a fraction of a second before it happened. The neural device found the sweet spot between the guard's armor plates, and the mighty warrior dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Want to know something fascinating about human martial arts? Jack asked conversationally, advancing on the slave master. We developed them specifically to fight stronger opponents. Thousands of years of learning how to turn strength against itself. The slave master fired, but Jack was already moving. The shot scorched the wall as he closed the distance, every motion economical and precise. The slave master's superior height and strength became a liability as Jack trapped his arm and used the Kraxen's own weight to bring him crashing down. Impossible, the slave master wheezed again, his translator glitching from the impact. Our systems, our strength, are predictable, Jack finished, retrieving the fallen sidearm. You rely on cybernetic enhancement to make you stronger, faster, more efficient. But you forgot the most important lesson of combat. Unpredictability is the deadliest weapon of all. Security alarms began blaring as Jack quickly stripped useful equipment from the fallen Kraxen. Their own neural devices would prove invaluable for what came next. He accessed the door controls with codes he'd memorized during his docile phase, watching the security feeds through the room's monitors. You should have studied Earth's military history, he told the groaning forms around him. Humanity's greatest victories didn't come from superior strength or technology. They came from being underestimated. As heavily armed response teams converged on his position, Jack allowed himself a genuine grin. The real game was about to begin. The Kraxen were about to learn that they hadn't captured a prisoner. They'd let a wolf into their henhouse. Checking the stolen weapons charge and securing the neural devices, Jack Stone stepped into the corridor, ready to teach these pirates why humanity's warriors were feared across the galaxy. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and now it was time to start a fire. The Kraxen security feed showed only static where Commander Jack Stone should have been. 3 heavily armed response teams converged on his last known location, only to find an empty corridor and disabled cameras. Their confusion was audible over the ship's command channel, which Jack monitored through a stolen communicator. Impossible. Humans don't have cloaking technology. The security chief's mandibles clicked in frustration. Find him. Jack smiled from his position in the maintenance shaft, a space the Kraxan had deemed too small for any worthwhile species to navigate. Their arrogance was becoming his greatest weapon. "This is Security Team Alpha," a voice crackled over the comm. "Approaching Junction 7B. No sign of the human yet, but..." The transmission cut off abruptly. When the backup team arrived 3 minutes later, they found their compatriots unconscious, their neural implants temporarily scrambled. On the wall, written in phosphorescent maintenance gel, was a message. Lesson 1. Humans don't need technology to disappear. Jack moved through the ship's infrastructure like a ghost, using maintenance shafts and disposal chutes to bypass the Kraxan's sophisticated security grid entirely. Years of boarding actions had taught him that every ship, no matter how advanced, had these primitive arteries running through its heart. He accessed a terminal in an abandoned cargo processing station, his fingers dancing across the alien interface. The Raider's crash course in xenotech was paying dividends as he pulled up the ship's entertainment database. "Let's give them something to think about," he muttered, hewing up his selection. Throughout the ship, video screens suddenly flickered to life. The Kraxan crew froze as ancient footage began playing. Earth historical documentaries showing human guerrilla warfare through the ages. Vietnamese soldiers disappearing into tunnel networks. Bedouin raiders striking from desert shadows. Modern urban warfare with its emphasis on asymmetric combat. "Attention Kraxan vessel." Jack's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Today's lesson is about why humanity survived despite being physically weaker than most predators on our planet. We learned to be sneaky." In the ship's mess hall, the lights suddenly failed. When they came back on 20 seconds later, every weapon had been stripped from the guards' holsters. A new message gleamed on the wall. Lesson 2. Darkness is a human's natural habitat. The security chief ordered all hands to battle stations, but uncertainty had taken root. Guards jumped at shadows. Enhanced sensors were dialed up to maximum sensitivity, overwhelming their users with false positives as Jack's maintenance gel messages began appearing everywhere. Think you're safe in numbers. Lesson 3. Humans invented divide and conquer. A cascade of security alerts spread across the ship as doors suddenly sealed and unsealed in patterns that split response teams and isolated squad leaders. The Kraxan's superior numbers became a liability as confusion spread through their ranks. Jack watched from his hidden vantage point as a particularly large group of guards charged past. He triggered the ventilation system, flooding the corridor with cold mist. In the confusion, he dropped down behind them. "Looking for me?" he asked pleasantly. The guards whirled, weapons ready, but Jack was already moving. The neural scrambler found gaps in their armor with surgical precision. Each fallen guard's neural implants were transmitting their defeat to the entire security network. Lesson 4. He announced over their comm channel. Never fight a human on their terms. In the command center, the security chief watched in growing horror as more sectors of his ship went dark. The human wasn't just evading them. He was systematically dismantling their confidence, turning their own ship into a haunted house of psychological warfare. How? He demanded of no one in particular. How is one human doing this? The answer appeared on his personal screen, a message that would be remembered in Kraxan training manuals for generations to come. Final lesson. You assumed humans survived Earth through strength. We survived through cunning. And now you're in our jungle. As alarms continued to blare throughout the ship, Commander Jack Stone moved toward his next target, leaving behind a trail of disabled warriors and shattered assumptions about humanity's true nature. The engineering deck of a Kraxan warship was a marvel of biotechnology, a seamless blend of organic computing and mechanical precision. At least it was until Commander Jack Stone decided to introduce a little chaos into its perfectly ordered systems. "Beautiful setup you have here," Jack commented to the unconscious chief engineer, carefully propping him in a corner. "Let's see how it handles some human creativity." His fingers flew across the main control interface, applying everything he'd learned about Kraxan systems over the past hours. Their biomechanical technology was impressive, but it shared a fatal flaw with all sophisticated systems. It assumed its users would follow logical patterns. Access granted. The computer chimed. "Welcome, Chief Engineer Zaxtal." Jack grinned. "Thank you. Now, let's start with gravity control." Throughout the ship, artificial gravity began fluctuating in seemingly random patterns. One deck would experience double Earth normal gravity, while another suddenly became weightless. The Kraxan, with their heavy exoskeletons and cybernetic enhancements, found themselves suddenly trapped by their own advantages. Security teams converging on engineering. Jack muttered, watching the feeds. Time for Phase 2. He initiated a cascade of system commands that would have given any logical programmer a headache. Life support remained stable. He wasn't a monster. But everything else was fair game. Climate control went haywire, creating pockets of steam and frost. Communication systems began playing Earth music, everything from classical Mozart to heavy metal, making coordinated response impossible. Warning, the ship's AI announced. Unknown anomalies detected in primary systems. No anomalies, Jack corrected, typing faster. Just some good old-fashioned human chaos theory in action. The first security team reached engineering's outer doors, only to find them cycling open and closed in a random pattern. Their attempts to override the system were met with a cheery message. Door is functioning perfectly. Human interference level. Maximum. This is impossible. The security chief's voice crackled over the comm. How is he doing this? Jack keyed into the channel. Fun fact about humans, we spent centuries creating games where we solve complex puzzles for fun. Your ship's systems are honestly easier than some of the video games I played as a kid. To demonstrate his point, he triggered the emergency foam suppressant system, but only in sections occupied by security teams. The sight of elite Kraxan warriors slipping and sliding in the anti-fire foam would have been comical if it wasn't so tactically effective. Should have stuck to simple mechanical systems, Jack advised as he worked. The moment you made everything smart, you made it vulnerable to human ingenuity. The ship's lights began pulsing in a rhythmic pattern, synchronized with the beat of Earth battle hymns, now playing through every speaker. Jack had turned their entire vessel into a psychological warfare machine. Engineering level is compromised, a panicked voice reported. He's not just controlling systems, he's rewriting them. Correction, Jack broadcast. I'm teaching them to dance. Speaking of which, the maintenance droids, normally docile repair units, began moving through the corridors in perfect choreography, creating mobile barriers that further disrupted the Kraxan's attempts to reach engineering. Each droid displayed a holographic message. Even our machines have rhythm. In the command center, the captain watched in horror as system after system fell into what could only be described as organized chaos. The human wasn't just fighting them. He was mocking their entire approach to technology. Status report, the captain demanded. Sir, his executive officer responded, mandibles twitching in distress. We've lost control of environmental systems, internal transport, and most security functions. The human has. The officer paused, seemingly unable to believe his own words. He's taught our ship to play games with us. As if to prove the point, every screen on the bridge suddenly displayed a classic human game of Pong, with scores being kept between humans and pirates. Jack leaned back in the engineering control chair, admiring his work as chaos unfolded throughout the ship. The Kraxan were about to learn another fundamental truth about humanity. Give a human access to complex technology, and they'll either break it completely or make it do things its creators never imagined possible. Sometimes, if you were really unlucky, they'd do both at once. The bridge of the Kraxan warship had descended into barely controlled chaos. Warning indicators flashed across every console as Commander Jack Stone's voice echoed through the command center for the 100th time. His casual tone carried an edge of amusement. Most species would have surrendered by now. I admire your stubbornness. It's almost human. The captain slammed his armored fist against his command chair. We do not surrender to prey species. About that classification, Jack's voice shifted, becoming deadly serious. Let me show you why it needs updating. The main viewport suddenly displayed security footage from throughout the ship. In each frame, unconscious Kraxan warriors lay scattered like broken toys, their sophisticated combat armor useless against human ingenuity. I've disabled 60% of your crew without killing a single one, Jack continued. Would a prey species show that kind of restraint? The captain's mandibles clicked in agitation as he watched Jack appear on a new screen, standing in what had once been their most secure cargo hold. The human's posture was relaxed, almost casual, but his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator. Here's my offer, Jack announced, addressing not just the bridge but the entire ship. Surrender now, and I'll ensure you're treated according to Earth's prisoner protocols. Comfortable cells, fair trials, the works. He paused, letting that sink in. Or, the cargo hold's massive doors began cycling open behind him, revealing the purple-tinged void of the Carina Nebula. Jack stood at the edge, seemingly unconcerned by the lack of safety barriers. Or I can demonstrate why humans were the only species to develop sports specifically about jumping between high places. Your artificial gravity is still partly under your control. Want to see how well I can navigate in Zerob? The executive officer leaned close to his captain. Sir, he's bluffing. No species would. Jack took a casual step backward, letting the void's pull drag him out. The bridge crew watched in horror as he disappeared into the nebulous clouds, only to reappear on another camera, having used the ship's external maintenance rails to swing himself to a different deck entirely. Fun fact, Jack's voice was slightly breathless but still amused. Earth's military forces have been training for zero-gravity combat since the 21st century. Want to see what 300 years of refinement looks like? The captain's compound eyes narrowed. Close all external hatches. Too late, Jack sang out. The next camera showed him moving through the ship's outer hull sections with practiced ease, using handholds meant for maintenance drones. I should thank you, by the way. Your ship's design is perfect for parkour. All these lovely pipes and conduits. He disappeared from view again, only to emerge inside a different section of the ship. Guards converged on his position, but Jack was already moving, using the variable gravity to bounce off walls and ceilings with impossible agility. The thing about humans, he lectured as he evaded capture, is that we turn everything into a game. Your ship, it's just the world's biggest jungle gym to me. The security chief's voice crackled over the comm. He's making us look like amateurs. How can one human move like that? Because, Jack answered, suddenly appearing on the bridge's secondary entrance screen. Unlike you, we never let our technology make us forget our evolutionary advantages. Flexibility. Adaptability. His grin turned predatory. Creativity. The bridge crew drew weapons, but Jack had already vanished into the ship's labyrinthine structure again. Final offer, his voice echoed through every speaker. Surrender in the next 10 minutes, or I start playing really dirty. And trust me, there was a dark chuckle. You haven't seen dirty until you've seen how creative humans can get with limited resources. The captain looked at his executive officer, then at the displays showing his crippled ship and demoralized crew. For the first time in his career, a Kraxan warrior considered the unthinkable, surrendering to a single human who had turned their entire ship into his personal playground. And somewhere in the depths of the vessel, Commander Jack Stone prepared for their answer, ready to show them just how much more creative he could be. The universe had a sense of humor, Commander Jack Stone decided. Just as the Kraxan captain opened his mandibles to respond to the surrender ultimatum, 3 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace, their distinctive chitinous hulls gleaming in the nebulous light. Reinforcements. The bridge crew's relief was palpable. We're saved. Jack's laugh echoed through the ship's speakers. Are you, though? The captain's antenna twitched as warning indicators suddenly flashed across his tactical display. According to his instruments, all 3 arriving vessels had their weapons primed and locked on each other. What did you do? The captain's translator barely managed to convey his mix of horror and awe. Remember how I spent the last hour in your communication suite? Jack's voice was thick with satisfaction. I didn't just call your friends. I sent them some very interesting data about biological contamination protocols and potential cybersecurity breaches. On the main viewport, the largest of the new arrivals, the dreadnought HFY Wrath, opened a channel. Vessel Night Striker, your authentication codes indicate possible mimetic infection. Stand down and prepare for quarantine protocols. Before the captain could respond, the second vessel broadcast on all frequencies. Negative, HFY Wrath. Our scans indicate you're the compromised vessel. Power down your weapons or be designated hostile. The beauty of bureaucracy, Jack commented as the 3 new arrivals began a heated argument about quarantine procedures and chain of command. You made your authentication protocols so complex that even your own people can't tell when they're being played. The captain watched in dismay as his potential rescuers devolved into a 3-way standoff, each convinced the others were compromised. This is impossible. You couldn't have predicted reinforcements would arrive. I didn't have to, Jack replied. I just had to make sure that when they did, they'd be more worried about each other than about me. Your own protocols did the rest. On the tactical display, the new arrivals had formed a perfect triangle, each training weapons on the others while demanding compliance with increasingly obscure security procedures. But the authentication codes, the executive officer protested. The command frequencies. We're all in your database, Jack finished. You know what humans are really good at. Pattern recognition. Give us enough examples of how something works, and we'll figure out how to make it work for us instead of against us. The bridge crew watched helplessly as their potential rescue turned into a diplomatic nightmare. Jack had somehow transformed their greatest advantage, the arrival of overwhelming force, into yet another demonstration of human cunning. So, Jack's voice carried a note of finality about that surrender. Still feeling confident in your backup plans? The captain looked at his crippled ship, his increasingly demoralized crew, and the standoff unfolding before him. Even if he somehow regained control of his vessel, the situation had spiraled far beyond a simple capture gone wrong. Attention all vessels. Jack broadcast on all frequencies, his voice carrying the authority of absolute confidence. This is Commander Jack Stone of the Earth Space Force, currently in control of key systems aboard the Night Striker. I'm declaring this vessel secured under Article 7 of the Galactic Maritime Salvage Code. The surrounding ship's commanders paused their argument, suddenly uncertain. Jack had just invoked one of the few universal laws that even pirates respected: salvage rights. Any vessel attempting interference will be considered in violation of salvage law, Jack continued smoothly. And trust me, you don't want to deal with Earth's Admiralty lawyers. They make me look positively friendly. A slow clicking sound emerged from the captain's translator. Cracks and laughter, tinged with resignation. You didn't just defeat us militarily, he realized. You trapped us legally as well. Humans didn't become a spacefaring species by being predictable, Jack replied. Now about those surrender terms. As the captain finally gave the order to stand down, Jack allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Kraxan had thought they were capturing a simple human. Instead, they'd discovered why humanity's warriors were respected across the galaxy, not for their strength, but for their ability to turn any situation to their advantage. Even the arrival of reinforcements had become just another tool in humanity's arsenal. 2 days later, Commander Jack Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, watching through the viewport as Earth security forces processed the captured Kraxan vessels. Captain Martinez, his old friend from the Raiders, hadn't stopped shaking her head since arriving with the response fleet. Let me get this straight, Martine said, reviewing the after-action report. You took control of a Kraxan warship, turned their reinforcements against each other, and did it all without a single casualty." Jack shrugged, sipping from a mug of real coffee, his first since the ordeal began. The no casualties part was important. Hard to establish new diplomatic precedents if you're leaving bodies in your wake. On the main screen, the Kraxan captain was giving his official statement to Earth authorities. His mandibles clicked with what had become a reluctant respect. "We thought we understood humans." The translator rendered his words. "We thought their strength came from their technology, their ships, their weapons. We were wrong. They're already calling it the Stone Doctrine," Martins informed him, unable to hide her grin. "Using an enemy's own systems and bureaucracy against them. The diplomatic corps is having a field day." Jack watched as Earth shuttles continued their work, transferring the Kraxan crews to proper detention facilities. The pirates' expressions had changed from anger to something closer to curiosity. Many had requested access to human historical records, particularly those dealing with guerrilla warfare and asymmetric combat. "You know what the really interesting part is?" Jack set down his coffee. "They're adapting already. The Kraxan captain asked me about human training methods. Seems they're reconsidering their entire approach to combat." Martinez raised an eyebrow. "You're saying they want to learn from us? After you humiliated them?" "Because I humiliated them," Jack corrected. "That's the thing about the Kraxan. They respect strength, but they're absolutely fascinated by cunning. And humanity just gave them a masterclass in thinking outside the box." The bridge crew worked efficiently around them, but Jack caught the proud glances thrown his way. Word had spread quickly through the fleet about how one human had turned a hostage situation into a revolution in interspecies combat doctrine. "The Admiralty wants to know if you'll consider teaching a course," Martins mentioned casually. "Something about creative solutions in asymmetric warfare." Jack's laugh echoed across the bridge. "Maybe. But first, I think we need to address the real lesson here." He gestured to the captured ships. "The galaxy needs to understand that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our physical capabilities. It's our creativity," Martinez finished. "Our ability to take any situation and turn it on its head." "Exactly." Jack's expression grew thoughtful. "You know what the Kraxan captain said to me right before your fleet arrived. He said they'd always classified humans as an uplifted prey species that got lucky with tool use. Now they're having to rewrite their entire xenological database." On the screen, the Kraxan captain was still speaking. "The human didn't just defeat us. He rewrote our understanding of warfare itself. We thought we were the apex predators of space. Now we must consider, what does it mean when the prey learns not just to fight back, but to do so with mercy and wisdom?" Martinez checked her datapad. "Speaking of rewriting things, the diplomatic corps wants your input on the new first contact protocols. Apparently, humans are more creative than you expect, needs to be emphasized." Jack watched as the last of the Kraxan ships was secured, their once proud crews now students of a lesson they never expected to learn. His capture hadn't just changed their view of humanity. It had demonstrated why humans had survived countless challenges that should have destroyed them. "You know what the best part is?" he said finally. "They'll tell this story to every species they meet, not as a warning, but as a lesson. Never assume you understand humans. We're not just survivors or warriors or clever tool users." His smile carried the weight of centuries of human innovation. "We're the species that turns disadvantages into strengths, that finds victory in seeming defeat, and that somehow manages to make friends with the very pirates who try to enslave us." The legend of Commander Stone's capture would spread across the galaxy, but the real story wasn't about one man's victory. It was about humanity's greatest gift, the ability to turn any situation, no matter how dire, into an opportunity for change.